Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Concili Inc., Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt, as well as our episode sponsors, Save Lives Nevada and Washoe Education Association. One APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Concili Incorporated is Nevada's premier Democratic campaign firm. Fighting for progressive issues and candidates for over a decade, and proud sponsor of Battleborn Progress.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Out in Front with this special edition on Tuesday evening. We're trying to be respectful of the Jewish holiday this week, so thank you for joining us on Tuesday so that our Jewish friends can also celebrate or observe their holiday the correct way. So this is a super important conversation tonight on Out in Front. My name is Annette Magnus, and I am the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. So I want to make sure that everybody understands, you know, this is a conversation that is really near and dear to my heart. My mom is an educator. She is an office manager at the elementary school that I went through, K through 5th grade here in Clark County. I'm a proud product of the Clark County School District, which I love. I also went to UNLV, so I'm also a product of higher ed here in Nevada. And many of our staff actually are too. We are examples of people who have gone through these school districts, north and south, who stay here, make Nevada our home, and want to see Nevada as a better place for everyone. And so the reason why we wanted to have this conversation tonight with two of the school board trustees who I look up to and admire so much is because, you know, there have been some very important decisions made in the last couple of weeks here in Clark County and all across the state. This is something that our educators and our trustees are going to start tackling. And so we wanted to talk about that, and we wanted to talk about what's going on specifically in the Clark County School District first. So I want to bring in two of my friends. The first one is Trustee Linda Cavazos. The second one is Trustee Lisa Guzman. And both of them have been doing so much work on the school board to, move Clark County School District forward. So President Cavazos, you are the president of the Clark County School Board. Come on in, greet our guests, and tell folks what you've been working on, because I know it's been a tough couple of months for you.
Thank you, Annette, and thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. And just to let you know, we're big fans of you too, and Battleborn Progress. So we have been working, the board has been working on a number of things. Of course, the most recent one that's been most in the news has been having to do with COVID-19 and the mitigation factors and what's happening in our schools, the concerns of our parents, our educators, and the general community about what's happening. We also have had a lot of work being done on a proposed anti-racism policy. We've had a lot of questions about substitutes, the shortage of teachers, what's going on with transportation. So it's been a pretty busy year. And I would say that even just during these past few months, we, as I'm sure you've seen, have had a lot of activity during our public comment sections at our board meetings. So there's been a lot of things in that, and those are just a few of them.
Thank you for that, Trustee. I was trying to get off mute. Trustee Guzman, I want to bring you in. Introduce yourself to the guests. You're newer to the school board, but you're not newer to me. I've worked with you in many different capacities with our friends over at the Nevada State Education Association. So talk to us a little bit about who you are, the district you represent, and the good work that you've been doing on the school board so far.
Thanks, Annette. Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. I always feel so honored when I get to do things with my president, Linda Cavazos. So I'm so excited about this. So I am the trustee for District A, and District A goes from Southern Henderson all the way down to Laughlin. And in my district, we have a lot of things happening. And what's really kind of great is that one of the founders of No Racism 1865 lives in my district. So I do get to have a lot of really quality conversations with the parents. So we also have a new school, which is Hannah Marie Brown Elementary School, which the namesake is she has her own little parking space at the elementary school, which is really great. And we've been doing a lot of work just having the open communication. I've only been in this position for almost 9 months. And in that time, we've also gone through the transition of principals. We did the principal buyout, and that has changed some cultures in different schools. And my schools in my district had that happen. And so we've been kind of working through that. And I also used to be the ESEA executive director before I became the trustee. And I had to pass that baton off to Brian Lee. But now I am currently the assistant executive director for NSEA, and I am sitting in my Reno office because I have to work with a lot of different locals. I work with the rural locals, and I work in Washoe. And then I spend a lot of time at home. I'm so grateful for Zoom because I live in Henderson. And so I can go back and forth via Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important, especially in times like these. We're meeting people where they are. So it's been great. So I do want to remind folks at home, we are going to have question and answer during this tonight. So if you have questions, please bring them. Both of our special guests want to answer your questions tonight, whether you're an educator, a parent. We want to make sure that we're answering your questions, and we wanted to use this time to really dig deep into some of the work that these two fabulous people have been doing for us. So Trustee Cavazos, I'm going to start with you. And I want to start with this one right off the bat, because this is something that I watched till 1 a.m. with all of you and did not go down there because I didn't want COVID, but watched. Recently, the Clark County School Board trustees held a special meeting on vaccines for staff. Tell us what was the goal of that meeting and why it was so important for transparency purposes to really have a full meeting just on that topic alone, so that staff could come and ask questions, the public could come and ask questions, and folks could view from home if they're a parent, maybe of somebody who has a pre-existing condition or something like that. I know this is something I care deeply about because I have a parent who works in the Clark County School District who has a pre-existing condition, who I am deathly afraid every day when she goes to work that something bad is going to happen. I know I've talked to you a lot about this. So why was it so important to have that meeting and make this decision?
Thank you, Annette. And some of that you've already actually covered, and that was the part about why it was so important to have what was called a special meeting. In other words, it wasn't one of our work sessions. It was not, it's basically a one topic meeting. So it's not something like our work sessions where we have a number of trustee items or a board agenda, like on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, where we have consent agenda items. And we have different types of items related to the community and to the school district. This was something that was requested by the superintendent, and we came to a consensus on when we would have it. And what was really important to us was to be able to hear from everyone. And we did. We heard from a lot of people, not only that were there in person, but we heard from people that basically sent in their written comments. I know that Trustee Guzman probably received a lot of emails and a lot of texts, a lot of messenger, direct tweets, communications, even before the meeting started. So you asked about the goal, Annette, and the goal was that the superintendent wanted to present to us a resolution that was designed basically with public safety in mind. He wanted to present to us experts from the Southern Nevada Health District, also from our own staff. And we know that the public sometimes gets very frustrated. We do too, as far as not being able to see all the numbers that we are seeing coming in. It's public knowledge that we did have, Trustee Guzman did have Lamping Elementary in District A that went on distance education for 2 weeks. We had a lot of questions about that. And we had a lot of, I'll just say it, a lot of fear, Annette, anxiety, confusion, just not knowing what was going to happen. And I think that sometimes, I always say all the time that words matter. And I think that mandate, the word mandate, it's kind of a trigger word. It's kind of a word that kind of sets off a lot of emotions. So what we wanted to do was be able to present hear about the resolution from the superintendent, from the staff, but also to hear the underlying reasons for what was going on with this request. And that was that this was a public safety issue. We have children right now that can be vaccinated, but only from the age of 12 years on up. So we are looking at what's happening across the country. A lot of the things that are happening at our meetings as far as the emotions, the conflicting opinions. It's not just here, it's across the country. We see it here. We see it here in Nevada. We've had school board members resign. There's been a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of things going on. But when you came right down to the crux of it, we had doctors there and experts that were talking to us and answering what I felt were some very incisive and difficult questions from our board of trustees. I would say that all 6 of us that were there present asked some very good questions, and they did their best. And sometimes we get carried away on asking our questions, and they have to come back and say, Trustee Cavazos, so what is your actual question there? And then we clarify. But the bottom line was, the more people that we get vaccinated, the more our numbers of positive cases are going to go down. And we need to listen to the documented, validated science that is out there. And the best way, as the superintendent explained it, and also Dr. Luff from the Southern Nevada Health District, is that we have all these children in our schools. We have athletes, we have kids that they want to be able to go to choir, they want to be able to go to their plays, they want to be able to go to homecoming. They want to be able to do all these things. But if we don't have a larger number of adults who are there with those children 6.5 hours a day, if we don't have them vaccinated or tested, and again, a lot of emotion, we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there were going to be exemptions. There's a process for the exemptions. We did have Mr. Cedric Cole for equity and diversity and be able to talk about that. So I would say that the goal was to get as much information out there and to be able to let them know not only the why, Annette, but how we got here. And that was with the uptick in cases, the Delta variant, and also too, we had to be frank about the number of children now being affected by this virus, not just like a case of the sniffles, but children being admitted to hospitals, children being seriously ill. We had to get that information out there. And that's the long answer to a short question, but a very complex question about why this needed to be so-called special meeting. I like to call it just like it's a focused meeting. It's a one topic meeting for a very specific purpose.
Yeah,
We also,
I want to come to the trustee in just a second, but I want to add something to this for the viewers at home who, maybe on the fence about vaccine mandates or maybe on the fence about a vaccine. I just feel compelled to share this, and Trustee Guzman, I'll come to you. I mandated the vaccine for my staff. I have a staff of 10. It is mandated. The boosters are mandated because frankly, I believe in science and my staff believes in science. And if we're going to be out here promoting this, we need to walk the walk. If we're going to scream about something, we got to walk the walk. Obviously, Trustee, the exemptions that you talk about are the same exemptions we will follow because those are our exemptions that you have to follow. But I watched my neighbor get carried out of her house on a sheet the other night. Gray couldn't breathe, is still on a ventilator 6 days later. I I thought she was vaccinated. I had driven my other neighbors to get vaccinated. Had I not known, I would have driven her too, right? This is not something we can play with. Like, this is a matter of actual life and death that we're talking about here. This isn't a game. I'm sorry, there are no questions about the science. I was watching that meeting. The health district was there talking about the specifics of the science that has been studied, that has been looked into. Like, there is no black and white area here for me. And I'm really struggling with this because, again, I have lots of friends and family who work in the district. And there's a lot of young kids that I love who go to the school district who have things like asthma and other things. Like, if we don't do this, we are literally playing with people's lives. That is what we're talking about. Or the school shut down again. Those are the two choices, right? So Trustee Guzman, I want to bring you into that. I just had to say it because my blood pressure rises every time I have this conversation.
And we are friends on Facebook. And so you've seen that I have recently lost someone due to COVID. And I even mentioned it during our meeting. I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that the reason why we had a one-off per se for the vaccination mandate was because we wanted to be transparent. One of the things that I hear all the time is that we're not transparent and that we have these backroom decisions. I want you to know that no trustee knew exactly how they were going to vote that night. We had so many emails, and I read all of mine. I know President Cavazos read all of hers, and I don't know if President Cavazos was doing the percentages that I was doing, but I had about 65% of the people that I represent that wanted the vaccine mandate in my inbox. And then, if there were Twitter tweets to me and all of those, but I could not verify that I represent them, but I listened to them also. And I also listened to the folks that showed up and the people who were texting me saying this is the reason why they didn't show up. And so they were asking me why, as someone who is vaccinated and is pro-vaccine, held a super spreader event. And I didn't see it that way. We tried very hard to ensure that everyone was wearing a mask, but we wanted to be transparent about the conversations that we were having, the people that were telling us what we needed to know to do the mandate. And we had a couple of trustees that did not agree with us. So we all have our own opinions, and we all come with our own thought processes, and we all read what our constituents are sending to us, and we listen to public comment. I have my favorite, Sarah Comroe, for the record, and she always is there for us, and she will talk to us, and she will try to give us the educator's side. And I am always happy to see her, but I worry because she does come double masked and she sits in the audience. So there's a personal side to these meetings too. We get to know the people who are doing public comment.
And Annette, can I chime in for just a moment?
Yeah, but before you do, sure. Trustee, just really quickly, Ryan, Steve Horner, all of our friends, I see you in the chat. Don't worry, we're going to get to you. Keep putting your questions in the chat. We will get to as many questions as we can. I know a lot of our educators are watching tonight. A lot of parents are watching tonight. So please put your questions in the chat. Share this on your Facebook pages if you haven't already, because we want as many people participating in this conversation as possible. So Trustee Cavazos, go ahead.
I just want to say real quickly, kind of piggybacking on what Trustee Guzman had said, is one of the things, as far as when we're talking about why have a super spreader event, one of the things we had to struggle with constantly is to get across to people that this is a business meeting and a public venue. We do want to hear everyone, But when you have, excuse me, if you have somebody, and this really gets to me, if I have an educator up there, no matter what their opinion is, whether they would rather just be tested and not vaccinated, or we have a student, that's my biggest pet peeve right there. And then we have the doctors, people that are saying, well, you guys aren't doctors. Well, no, we're not. Then we have the doctors up there, and they didn't want to listen to them either. So my thing is that if you want to be listened to, don't take the time away from a student, no matter what their opinion is, and they're trying to engage and be part of the conversation. And I've been very honest with people. I've told them I've lost, since 2020, I've lost 8 friends. All of them, not all of them lived here. 4 of them lived here, 1 in New York and 3 in Arizona, and 1 was a teacher. That's a lot of people. The oldest one was 60 years old. So it's not something where you can just say, oh, they must have been 85 years old. And I will say that I believe 3 out of the 8 did have underlying conditions. The other ones did not. One was a health professional, a respiratory therapist that was trying her best to help people in the hospital. And we lost her, 41 years old with a 6-year-old daughter. So I want to say to people that if you have not been through this, I know Lisa has, I'm sorry I have a frog voice, been on Zooms all day. I've held the hand of a 7-year-old child in my office as she said goodbye to her grandmother on an iPad. You don't get over things like that. You don't think about this as just, okay, this is just the flu, or these are just the sniffles. It's not. So I just want to put that in there and be transparent about that.
Yeah, no. Anybody who thinks that COVID is just the flu or the sniffles, like, that's not real. And maybe for some people it is, especially if you get vaccinated, which helps to make sure you don't die from COVID. But as somebody who has a pre-existing condition myself, I have asthma. I don't want to play with this. I don't want to mess around with this. And I know most of the folks around me don't either, especially the ones who have young children in school who cannot yet get vaccinated. So, okay, so I want to move to our next question. And this is for both of you. Trustee Guzman, we'll start with you. What feedback have you received from the Clark County School District staff, whether teachers, educators, bus drivers, support staff, whoever, right? All of your staff regarding vaccines for everyone?
So actually, before we held the meeting, I held a meeting with staff members from one of my schools because they felt that as soon as we voted on the mandate and they couldn't get the vaccine or wouldn't get the vaccine due to religious issues or religious reasons, that was a bad choice of words, religious reasons, that they were going to lose their job. And I wanted to make sure that they understood that the thing is, we just voted that, yes, the district should come up with a plan for the mandate. It's just a plan. They have to negotiate with the unions to find out how that rolls out and that we will follow the law. And so there would be options if they could not take the vaccine for whatever reason. And once I started to get that message out, I felt like the folks that are the staff that are most affected by this understood that they needed to talk to their unions to assist with planning and the rollout, because that's a negotiation. That's not something that we do. We can't do that from the dais. What we can do is we can say, yes, we would like you to get started on a plan for this. And then it becomes, once we say that, it becomes what folks hate to hear us say, but it's operational. We can give the oversight. This is what we would like to see, but then it becomes operational and it's out of our hands and it's up to the unions to come up with that plan.
So I know you come from a union background. Not all of us have the privilege of that. Luckily, I do. My mom is a part of the union. I grew up in union, so I get it. But Trustee, explain specifically how the union negotiations will go in this, right? Because I think that's a very important piece that especially employees maybe are not understanding is nothing will get done without those bargaining units being brought in, a full lengthy discussion being had with all of the different unions involved. And they're going to be very much a part of this process in this decision. The trustees simply vote on this. Then it goes down to the school district to work directly with the unions to implement, right?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. The unions have identified a bargaining team that will meet with the district, and they will come up with a plan. What we voted on was a resolution to get the ball rolling, essentially. And then what happens is after those plans are decided, they come back to us, and then we vote to make sure that it can be enacted. And there are a lot of check-ins along the way. We don't really get involved in bargaining. We just are briefed on the check-ins, and we're told what's happening, but that's pretty much it. We leave it in the hands of the district. And then they check in with us. If there's something that we either don't understand or we need some clarification, we will ask the lead negotiator to go back and get that clarification for us. But we don't lead the bargaining.
Right.
So I'm going to skip into a viewer question because I do think it's relevant to what you just said, Trustee. So Ryan, who we talked about before, the whole reason I did this show, Ryan, shout out to you. He's one of our educators in the district. And he's like, Annette, when are you doing another show on the Clark County School District? I was like, I got you. So that day I literally texted with Trustee Cavazos. I was like, we got to do this special. So his question is, why does Superintendent Jara have control over all operational decisions? And what power do the trustees have at this point for this? And either of you can jump in and talk about why the setup is the way it is, because it's honestly something I've been wondering myself.
I'll take that first, and Lisa can jump in if she likes. So his question is why? What power do we have, and why is it set up this way? Basically, as far as the superintendent operational.
He wants to know why everything is operational. Essentially, that's what the question is.
Okay. All right. So I'll make this as simple as I can. It's not probably the answer that, as Lisa had said before, where people get tired of us saying this, but we basically have one employee, and that's the superintendent. He is then the employer for all the educators. And basically, we have input. As Lisa said, the negotiations team can bring us materials. They can bring us an update. They can bring us all kinds of stuff. We get to give some input into it. If there is something that is definitively comes under, I'll give an example. Let's say that there's something that is a fiscal note and it is brought to the board, and we need to give our approval or disapproval on that. If we are not satisfied with what's told to us in a briefing, we can then ask for more information, a follow-up. We can ask for it to be pulled. I see Annette kind of smiling there, which always scares me a little bit. But operational basically means that he is the boss of everything that's going on in the schools. Now, I'll give you an example of something of where we can make a difference. I got a message this morning having to do, well, I get a lot of them, but I'll just use one specific one without names of schools, people, whatever, but it's from an educator. It was a very valid question. It was basically asking about the Q&A that was done last night on Facebook Live, and that one of our staff had said one thing, and it was on the website as far as under the reopening plan. But this educator said, but my principal is telling me this. Now, I know that's operational. I do not have any control over that, but then I can route it to the superintendent and to the rest of the staff and say, hey, what's going on here? So that's, I don't know if I'd call that power, more like oversight, which is what we're supposed to do. Because if we see a policy and that policy is listed, then that policy needs to be followed. And I'm a broken record on this. Anything looks wonderful on a piece of paper, on a computer screen, on a resolution, on the website. But if it's not enforced and it's not consistent and it's not, shall we say, I don't know, I guess we'll overuse the word transparent enough that everybody can understand it, and that means parents, educators in the community, then we might as well not have it. So we have a lot of educators that are getting very frustrated because they don't feel that, I'll just say it, the COVID-19 protocols are being followed consistently and district-wide. And we have that power to ask those hard questions. Ryan, I know that Ryan's going to want still some more on that, but I'm just giving an example of something that happened today.
And I just want to follow up on that, just to kind of break it down. So if there's, when we say that things are operational and oversight, it's we're the ones that give the go ahead. Like, is something going to happen, like the anti-racism policy, when we're talking about different, like grading even, that has to come to us, but we can't create the system that goes down to the educators. That has to be created from staff. And that's why it's called operational. We give the okay to move forward with these policies, but the nuts and bolts come from Jara and his cabinet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can talk more about Superintendent Jara in a minute.
Awesome. My vote's on the record.
That's cool. So I want to go back to the vaccine policy, and then we can move on to some of these other things. I know we're getting a ton of questions in the chat. That's actually what I was smiling about, is I'm watching the chat in real time, because this one's we've got over 50 people watching again tonight, because I knew this one was going to be a big one. So good. The board did vote on this during the meeting. They voted in favor, thank goodness, minus my trustee, unfortunately, and then obviously the one who didn't bother to show up. What can we expect next? So Trustee Cavazos, where do we go from here? And then Trustee Guzman, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Annette. I actually just talked to the superintendent about this today, what you just said right now, what you just asked, and that was, where do we go next? And what he informed me is that now the meetings are coming together. And as Lisa said, you know, these meetings have to happen with our bargaining units, with the unions. So we are looking at, and he did not give a timeline. Several people asked about a timeline, including us, but he was not able to give a timeline at that point because, again, we have our negotiating team working with the various unions. I personally do not expect that everybody is going to jump on board at the same time, but that's the next step. As we get each union to a particular, what's the right word there, Lisa? Place. A place, you know, where it is agreed upon. One of the things that kind of dovetails with this, Annette, were the number of educators that showed up that were concerned about what Lisa has already mentioned. I keep saying Lisa, I should say Trustee Guzman. I'm not very professional here, but loss of jobs, class sizes. We already have, you know, a shortage of teachers, bus drivers, an unbelievable number of questions about transportation and nurses, the SP, just so many categories. I started to list off all the categories and I thought I better not. But so many right now that are working so many hours to keep our kids safe. So when we can get these meetings going, as Lisa said, giving the go ahead, we need to then be looking and be able to ask as trustees, okay, so you've met with this union, you've met with this union, then we have a closed session. What is the projection right now? What are we looking at as far as when we can implement this? Because again, Everything looks good as a plan, but if you don't have enforcement and implementation, you might as well not have it. So that's what our next step is. We do have to get those meetings going as soon as possible.
Trustee Guzman.
So I think transparency is really critical during this time, and letting folks know where we are in the process. And just like Trustee Cavazos stated, it's truly with the unions right now. And as soon as they can negotiate and get together, that's when we'll find out what it's going to look like. Now, obviously, we don't want to lose any staff, but we also need to be completely upfront. If folks want to know where their union is in the negotiations process, they need to contact their union, because we're not going to know until towards the end. And we'll be as transparent as we can be. But during negotiations, we can't say anything. We can just say we gave them the go-ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the unions are going to be such a critical piece of this whole process. And I mean, that's the reason unions exist. That's the whole reason they exist.
Right.
So the next question, Trustee Guzman, I'll start with you. So hypothetically, what happens if a Clark County School District staff member doesn't want to get the vaccine? And I know you guys talked a lot about this the other night on the meeting, which I watched for 8+ hours. What happens? It's not an immediate termination. That is just this misinformation that is being put out into the world. What actually happens, and what process will there be? Because they will still have union representation that will protect them, and there will be processes they have to go through before any of that happens.
And I'll be honest with you, Annette, I don't know. Until the union negotiates that process, we're not going to know what it's going to be. The union comes up with a collaborative process with the district. So they come together and they talk about it. Just like with disciplinary matters, there's a process that they have to follow. It's going to be the same with the vaccine. The unions and the district are going to collaborate and determine what that looks like. We're not going to know until they come to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay. I want to kind of wrap this conversation on vaccines, because there's another really important piece that I want to get to. What do you say to people who oppose this plan? Because we know there are a lot of them showed up the other night. That's why I wouldn't go to the meeting, because I was like not going to sit with a bunch of people who'd refuse to believe that COVID is real. So what do you say to folks who maybe don't want to get the vaccine for whatever reason, don't want to wear a mask even? Where are we at on that? And Trustee Cavazos, you've kind of been targeted by these people a lot. And I think sometimes your safety is at risk because of it. So talk to me about what you would say to those folks.
I would say exactly what I said at the meeting, is that this is a public safety crisis. We have to protect our children. If we have folks that are immune compromised, I have some in my own family. If we have folks that for one reason or another have a truly legitimate reason for medically not being able to get the vaccine, we understand that. We also understand that if somebody says to me, you're taking away my freedom, you are taking away my rights as an American. Well, I'm an American too, but you know what? We've had vaccines in schools for how many years? We've had children having to get vaccines. Yes, are there exemptions? There are, but I would say to them, what are you willing to risk? And we have educators, one particular one that I know has said this many times, and he means it. And he says, what is it going to take? How many is it going to take? And I'll just say this as nicely as I can. Is it going to take one dead child, one dead educator? What is it going to take? Now, if I talk to someone and they make it quite clear that no matter what, that they are not going to get the vaccine, then basically I just have to say to them, this vaccine, this virus is mutating. I am reading, I don't know, on average 3 to 5 articles, and I try to read all the ones that people bring to us also out of respect. That doesn't mean that I agree with them, but I do try to read them. If they send me a link and say, you know, this shows that masks don't work, or, you know, this vaccine that you took is not safe, and, you know, millions of people are dying from this vaccine, I say, no, that's not correct. And this is why it's not correct. When we are looking at the districts across the country that have the lowest vaccination rates, and right here in Vegas, we already have hospitals that are on divert status. I had a friend the other day that was discharged from the hospital that absolutely should not be at home right now. But because of the number of unvaccinated COVID patients that were coming in, they gave her bed away, okay? She now, I will be honest, she wanted to come home, but medically, she should not be home. So I would say to them, this is something that you are not only, maybe you're not doing it for yourself, maybe you're doing it for your neighbor's child, maybe you're doing it for your friend's friend that is an educator, but this is not going to go away if we don't find a way to put a stop to it. And it has been proved that the best mitigating factor is the vaccine. So that's my soapbox. I do the best I can. I even have people who have survived the virus, but have had a really, really terrible time. I have them tell their stories, and people that are kind of on the fence, I think that they've been swayed by that. But if you are somebody that doesn't even have a child in school, you say that you are a concerned citizen, you don't have a child, you don't have a grandchild, you don't have anybody that's in our district, and you are showing up at these meetings and basically saying that we're taking your freedom away, that's very hard for me, as it is for you, Annette, to understand. I'm saying, you wanted us to keep our schools open. We're trying to keep our schools open. We cannot keep our schools open if children and educators are sick and quarantined all the time. We can't do it. We'll be back on distance learning.
Can I just follow up a little bit on that? I don't have a lot more to say because Trustee Cavazos just covered everything. But one of the things that we get criticized for a lot is that we're not looking at you when you speak. And one of the things that they do is they tell us about websites. And I will be honest, I have my computer open for public comment because our agenda and the notes are on screen, and so we can look at them all the time. But I keep my computer open so that I can Google those websites that they're telling us about, because I want to know what they're saying. And then I also go on Snopes to see if those websites or what the information they're giving is accurate. And I want to hear from them. There's no one that I don't want to hear from in public comment, but I also want them to know that I am not looking away from them because I'm not listening. I am absolutely listening. I am just checking out what they're telling me.
Right.
Yeah, anybody who thinks that our elected officials are going to sit through a 15-hour meeting or whatever it was that day and not look at a computer or get up to go to the restroom, obviously has never sat through a public meeting for that long. So as somebody who has, I know exactly what y'all are doing. Sometimes I actually even have electeds texting me back about questions that I personally have or my, other people have had. So it's just, that whole thing is just nonsense. Like, I'm just going to say it. Y'all can't say it, but I can say it. It is nonsense to think our elected officials are not sitting up there multitasking and can't listen to you while they're also reading the comments online, checking what's going on online, checking the comments that are coming in from the official feed and all the other things. That's just nonsense. I'm literally sitting here multitasking as I'm interviewing the two of you. So it can happen. Okay, I do want to get to one other topic before we move to audience questions, if that's okay with you all. And we're getting a lot of audience questions. Thank you for all of you who are tuning in at home. Make sure you're liking and sharing this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all the different places we're streaming this to. We want this to get out there far and wide. So please share, like, comment in the chat. We will get to as many questions as we can. I want to talk about the anti-racism policy. This is something that is really personally important to me. It's something that my friends over at 1865 No Racism in Schools has been working so hard on because of their personal situation with their sons at Arborview. We know that there's been some cases recently at Arborview and some of the other schools with racism happening in plain sight. You know, where are we going with this policy, and why is creating an anti-racism policy so critical in a district like ours, and frankly, any district? Trustee Cavazos, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. This is something that I've been extremely passionate about, and this was going back more years than I care to remember. But this policy, and an actual anti-racism policy, is decades and decades way overdue. And it's astounding to me when we have students who come to our meetings, go up to the microphone and actually tell about something that they have experienced. And we have people saying, if you guys just stop talking about racism, it won't exist. Excuse me, but that's not exactly how it works. Our kids are in the trenches. They're going through this. We had the incident a couple of years ago at Arborview, but that was not the only incident. That was an incident that was so blatant, so egregious that it got a lot of attention, as well it should have. But we have been having incidents happening all over the district. And when we just try to do Band-Aid solutions, if we ask our educators, oh, you know, click on this and put this video on while you walk around, and it's not interactive, nothing's going to happen, because we need to have a consistent policy that is, it's basically has a protocol that you must follow. Now, we have other folks that will write to me and they'll say, Linda, I understand what you're trying to do, but you know what? We already have an anti-bullying policy, and that has, that has this component, that has this component. Why do you need to have another policy? I'll tell you why. Because things are not getting that much better. When we have a child in kindergarten that's made fun of because of her hair, that's not okay. Or they make a comment about the color of her skin. I myself have been told to go back to Mexico or wherever I came from. I was born in a small rural hospital in Florence, Arizona. You know, I don't really want to go back to Florence, but I did not come from another country. And if they make fun of basically how I speak or how my family appears in pictures, I had to close down my Instagram account completely, not just because of threats against me, but they were actually making racially tinged comments about my family. So when I think about this, I see myself many years ago, and these kids are still going through this. And we have AB 371 from Assemblywoman Brittany Miller. We had a great meeting last night where she went over a lot of the education related laws. And I just tweeted this out recently. This is a law. This is not a suggestion. This is not a suggested dialogue. 371 is a law. It's very specific. And I myself personally, I have a funny feeling that Trustee Guzman feels the same way. This is not something that's going to be a little add-on addendum. It's going to be something that needs to be fully integrated into this anti-racism policy. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be having our students basically, I would say, racially tortured at school. I know that's a strong term, but I had a child who is a private client, okay, a private counseling client, say, I feel like I'm being tortured, but I still have to go to school.
And look, this is not anything new. As somebody who went through the Clark County School District, who was targeted because I wasn't a certain religion at the school I went to, that was disproportionately a certain religion. This is something that happens every single day, and it was happening to my friends of color in 2003 when I graduated from Centennial High School. This is nothing new. This is nothing has changed. In fact, I think it's probably gotten worse since I was in school. So this notion of somehow this isn't something that's needed. Yes, we need an anti-bullying policy. That's great. Yes, we need all of the different policies to protect all of our different kids. But we need a specific anti-racism policy that is specifically dealing with anti-racism and not anything else, because nothing else will do in this moment. And we have to rise to this occasion of addressing racism in our schools head on. So Trustee Guzman, I want to bring you in. I know you talked about this in your intro. This seems like a no-brainer to me.
It is. It actually is. And as someone who married someone from a small town in Arizona, I want you to know, Trustee Cavazos, I believe those people are awesome. But I want you to know that we get criticized a lot for how much time it's taking. And I kind of want to address that on the anti-racism policy. And I know I sound like a broken record on transparency, but had we as trustees gone into the back room and written a policy and brought it out, we would have been chastised about it. So what we wanted was to be very transparent, have a lot of voices in the room, and make sure that our policy addresses as much as we can. I really appreciate the fact that Trustee Cavazos addressed the bullying policy. The bullying policy doesn't go far enough. And anti-racism takes us to that next step. For a mom of two beautiful half Mexican children who were teased a lot because they were half, it really does affect us. It affects everyone. Everyone is affected by this policy, and we have to get it right. So in order to do that, it's not going to happen overnight. Now, obviously, it's not going to take as long as the transgender policy, because we keep asking about it and make sure that we are on track. But it is going to take some time. And I know that people are pushing us to write the policy, but we want to make sure that when we write it, we make it so that it has some teeth in it, and we can effectively make sure that the district is enforcing it.
Yeah, and just on a personal note, as someone who has waited a long time for the transgender policy to be put out there, as somebody who's waited an even longer time for y'all to deal with comprehensive sex ed, which still hasn't been dealt with, which I'll be coming back to y'all on that. I just think, yes, we need to spend some time on this, but like, people are being threatened and lives are being threatened every single day because of racism in our schools. Like, I get wanting to be thorough, but I do want to push back just a little. Like, there's also a sense of urgency here, because this is something that, kids are bringing guns to school and being threatened with flags and other nonsense that even in my day-to-day life as an adult, I shouldn't see, let alone our kids on school campuses who should be safe at our schools. So Trustee Cavazos, you want to talk a little bit about, that delicate balance that we're dealing with of trying to get it right, but also knowing that there are very real threats that are happening every day on our campuses?
Yes, Annette, absolutely. And originally, when we had brought this up and we had talked about it, and this is when we were still having our meetings, I believe at Las Vegas Academy, the specific conversation was that we wanted this to be a board policy. And we kind of went back and forth in the discussion as far as putting this together. It was brought up by one of the other trustees that if this was going to be district-wide, that we did have to have staff input. Now, what I had originally envisioned, and I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said to the superintendent, to the staff, etc. So that keeps me out of trouble. My mom always said that out of 6 children, I was the worst liar in the bunch. So I just try to stay on the straight and narrow there. It keeps me out of trouble. I had envisioned this as a board policy with input from the staff. It went in a different direction. I tried to listen to everyone, and the vote was that it would be the staff that would be putting together the structure with the superintendent. Now, that's always going to take longer. I'm just going to say it. It's always going to take longer. I think that the delicate balance needs to be here with what Trustee Guzman has talked about, is with the transparency and with the oversight. So I also, Trustee Guzman and I had our one-on-ones with the superintendent today. So we do that every other week. And so I had a chance to ask a lot of questions before the meeting tonight. And one of my questions is that we have to have a reasonable timeline. Like you said, things are happening every day. We do want to have thorough, but by the time we have 4 facilitators, we have an internal task force, we have an external task force. There's only so far you can go before you have all these people, and how do you get anything done? You guys know you need to have a reasonable number of people to get something done. Otherwise, instead of talking to one another, everybody's talking at one another. And the other thing that I want to just put out there is that we already have those lists of the people that are on these task forces. And I just want to say that if we have the common goal of coming out with a policy that is enforceable and that people have to be accountable for, that's a big word for me, accountability. If we have folks on there that do not agree with the common goal, even if they have different methodologies, that's okay with me. As a teacher, you have to have different methodologies for your different students. They're all unique. But if we have folks that are on there and that are holding back achieving that goal, then I think they need to come off. And I think that with all the hundreds of people that we had that applied for that, we need to reach our goal as soon as possible. Because if we don't, we're failing our kids. We're failing the students that are undergoing, as my little child said, I'm being tortured. He meant by words. He didn't mean physically. But you know what? Those little words, those are little arrows in the hearts of our kids.
Absolutely. So I want to go to our questions from the audience. We're going to start with the anti-racism policy. Emily has a specific question on this. She actually has a child on an IEP in the Clark County School District, and obviously is very concerned about racism as, a Latino family. She said, not sure if this was addressed already, but when will something change with Arborview High School? There are issues at every school, but it seems like nothing ever changes in the treatment of children of color at that school specifically.
That's neither one of our districts. That's Trustee Williams' district. But since I just finished talking, I don't know if Trustee Guzman wants to start on that, and I can chime in.
So the culture at a school is something that is very important, and she's right. Something does need to happen at Arborview. The thing is that my hope is that some of the things that have already been stated that we would like to put into place into the anti-racism policy is addressed at Arborview before the policy is implemented. My thing is what is causing this culture, right? I think that when the parents from 1865, No Racism in School 1865, they had a conversation with Dr. Barton about what was happening in Arborview. I think some of those things that they discussed need to be addressed, and then we can start that culture change. I think because those students are no longer going to that school, that maybe those things were dropped. I don't know for sure because it's not my school, but I do know that they spent a lot of time trying to create a roadmap to assist with that particular school.
Thank you for that, Trustee. All right, I want to move back up to our, just a couple of comments too that we'll get to. Terry Robertson, who's one of our favorite viewers. She says, please tell Trustee Cavazos, thank you for her she meant sting, but her compassionate leadership. So, or her strong but compassionate leadership. That's what she meant. So,
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, Maria asks, will Clark County School District be able to use any ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, to help keep teachers and students safe during COVID? And also just generally, what do we think that money is going to be used for? What's that process look like? Trustee Cavazos, if you want to kick us off.
Sure, I can start, or Trustee Guzman can, either one of us. We both went to several meetings. One of the main parameters for this money was supposed to be able to address a lot of the issues that arose from COVID. So that was not only the physical issues like on the cleaning, the ventilation, the classrooms, but also to address something that is very close to my heart, and that's also the social, emotional, and the mental health needs. We heard from a lot of parents from both sides of the coin. We had parents that kids did well on distance learning. We had more of a percentage where kids did not do well. And I think something that I don't want to be an elephant in the room tonight, we need to also look at not just with the anti-racism, but also with the funds that are spent for mental health, is that we need to look at taking care of our educators on a consistent basis, not just when it's this pops up or that pops up or this crisis. This district needs to be more proactive. So when you're looking at these ARP funds, we just voted on that last Thursday, as you know, if you watch the meeting. So again, this is one of those instances, as Trustee Guzman brought up, is that we're giving the go-ahead, and this specifically was on ESSER 3, all right? So Trustee Guzman, what was that, 770 million? Somewhere
777. Yeah, it's
okay,
777 million. Yeah.
She knows. So we had kind of like the blueprint presented to us. We had a lot of general categories where the trustees asked for more specifics. So that is going to definitely be one of the things that we're looking at. I think that just besides Trustee Guzman and myself, there were other trustees that also asked, are we going to be able to amend this? And we were told very specifically by Dr. Bernier and Dr. Jara that we would, because I will tell you right now that I saw several areas that I most definitely need more specifics on. But for the teachers and for the support professionals, this is what a lot of these funds are supposed to be for, to address those issues. So I cannot give the specifics because they haven't given them to us. So that's kind of the block that we're in right now.
And
I think she wanted to ask.
I was going to ask you a question really quickly, and then you can chime in on that too.
Okay.
How do people participate in that process with you all? Obviously, we know how it happens at the county. We know how it's happened at the legislature, but how can people be involved in the ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, getting distributed in the school district specifically? And then whatever else you want to add.
That's fine. So there's a timeline on this. So we held town halls, and there was a place to sign up or to attend town halls, and we hold a lot of them. Our district seems to love to have a town hall, and so attend them. I went to a couple in my district, and some of them had a lot of people giving their input. Some of them had no one giving their input. So we hold town halls, but the timeline that's really important is that we have until November 18th to get input from the public about our plan. So we approved a plan that went to the Department of Ed, and the Department of Ed has to approve what we have outlined as our priorities. And then it comes back to us, and we post a plan, and then the public gives us their input. A lot of folks want to have just a certain amount of money going to certain schools or giving a one flat rate to all schools and just let the schools determine how that money is spent. And I'm not saying that any of those ideas are wrong. I'm just saying, you know, give us a reason why and tell us how that would look. And then we can take a look at that, but it all has to be put into the plan, and it has to be in the categories that the public has stated are important to them.
That makes
November 18th, don't forget. That's
November
when we have
18th.
to have it approved. Yeah.
You got it. We'll keep that on our calendars too, and we'll make sure that everybody at home is getting reminders for that, since we're following it for literally everything we're working on right now. Our next question comes to us from Ryan. It's a second question. He said, I know they probably can't comment on this, but what did the trustees think of another trustee openly promoting not getting the vaccine? And you may not want to comment on that, but Ryan had that question.
It's
Well,
another thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's first of all, after we have a vote, you know, the majority rules, and we basically within our guidelines that is the vote. And also too, I think that we get into tricky territory, so to speak, because then one constituent might think we're talking about this trustee, one might think we're talking about another trustee, depending on whether it's something said on social media or in the meeting. But basically, it's not a good idea to comment on that, because we're all individuals, and we're going to have our specific opinions. I think the best way to answer that is that as much as possible, we try to put out our individual voices at the board meeting in public. So that's the best that I can do on that.
No, that makes total sense. I'll just add, because I'm full of hot takes tonight because of the mood I've had, or the week I've had already. I think it's absolute garbage that a trustee or any elected official at this point would put out false information about a vaccine or about any medical issues surrounding COVID-19. And I think all of those elected officials who want to promote false or misinformation at this point should be held accountable for that. And we will continue holding you accountable as Battleborn Progress, because that's our whole job. So if you want to make dumb comments on the internet as an elected official, please know we will hold you accountable. So that's my hot take on that, Ryan. You can take it and do with what you need with that. Trustee Guzman, anything you wanted to add there?
Just know I'm not going to say anything against my fellow trustees. I just don't think it's right for me to do that. But everyone knows where I stand. I don't hide any of that. That's what I'm going to say.
That's right. Okay, so next question comes from Wendy Starkweather, our dear friend. She says, many thanks to all you are doing, Trustee Cavazos and Trustee Guzman. I'm interested in hearing the perspective of the trustees and their role in the association with the superintendent and the school administration, especially as related to making policy.
Okay, so it sounds like she is asking about the actual policy making process and how our relationship relates to that with the superintendent. So I know Wendy, I'll take a stab at it, Wendy. So we try to make it as collaborative as possible. Today we had an agenda review it's for next week's meeting on the 23rd. So what we do is we're presented, the vice president and myself and our supporting staff, we're presented with basically the draft agenda without, and I want to make sure that everybody hears this, without the reference materials, without the backup documents. The trustees do not see any of that until it's posted online for the public to see on board docs. So people sometimes think that we have all this advanced information before they do. We get that information when the public does. So let's say that there is a policy on there, and I'll just say, oh, I'll just make something up. It's something on the consent agenda, which averages what, Lisa? Anywhere, it can be from like 15 to 40 items or whatever. And
At
that,
least.
yes, and that's voted on in one fell swoop unless a trustee says, hey, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with exception of 3.03. I'd like to pull that for separate discussion. So that's one part of policymaking, but like say at the agenda review, I have a question about 5.03. And I bring that up in our briefings that are on the Thursday before the meeting the following week. And I have a question about that, the way it's written. Staff will try to answer that for us as best as possible. But the staff and the superintendent for the regular board meetings, they are the ones, as Trustee Guzman had said, that bring that to us. Our policies, as far as the trustee policies, we work on those primarily at work sessions, which are on the first Wednesday of the month, currently at 8 o'clock a.m., which is not one of Trustee Guzman's favorite times to have a work session, but that is where we put together our policies, and he does sit in on those meetings. So it's a collaborative process. But again, Annette, again, being completely transparent, he has a lot of input because he has all the operational side. We have our limited side on the trustee policies and the board policies. So I know Wendy's going to be following up with me on that one. Wendy, I just want to tell you, this is my 6th Zoom call today.
Well, we will hurry so we can get you off of this Zoom call, but thank you for sticking
No,
with us.
that's not what I meant. I just meant I was going to follow up with Wendy.
No, we know, but we're also tired and you were tired too. So Terry asks another question. I think this is a really important one for like next steps on the vaccine policy. Will we ever be able to mandate the vaccination for students 12 and above? And we've been hearing now Pfizer, obviously, and others are starting to look at releasing the vaccine for children 5 and up. I know there's a lot of good studies and trials going on. A lot of my friends actually have their kids enrolled in the trials right now. Thank goodness for those children who are heroes. Do we think this is just going to become one of those vaccines once it's approved for kids that the kids have to get? Because surprise, surprise, friends at home watching, you've had a vaccine passport your entire life. That's how you got into school. So hate to break it to all you anti-vaxxers out there, but you have a record on this. You have since you've been in elementary school. So go to the Clark County Health District and you can pull your vaccine records, because I actually just did that recently. So Trustee Cavazos, let's talk about kids in the vaccine. Is this going to be one of those things that maybe gets mandated for kids? And Trustee Guzman, I know you have kids, you want to talk about that as well.
Well, first, Annette, you have to stop making me laugh so much so I can be able to answer the question. You just have this subtle way of getting your point across since I've known you, which has been a lot of years now. That is not on the table right now, to the best of the trustees' knowledge. We know that, and I'll be honest, I've been getting emails where people are looking at LA Unified and other districts where they're saying, okay, that's where you guys are going next. That has not been presented to us. That is not on the table right now. As Trustee Guzman said, we're at the point right now where we're just starting to get the meetings together with the unions so that what we already voted on goes forward. I just want to say something that the commissioners said at one of their meetings, and I'll echo what they said. We're not in control of this virus right now. This virus is in control. And until we continue with the mitigating factors that will save more lives, we have another virus now, I believe is it the Mu virus, Mu? It's MU. And I know that we've had cases of that already popping up here. Saw that on a medical report earlier today. So we have to go as it's evolving. We have to take care of our children. We have to take care of our employees. We have to take care of our community. So right now, the short answer is that that is not on the table.
I just want to,
at the present time.
Yeah, and I just want to add something, Annette. I don't know if you've noticed, but the Clark County School District has a really hard time rolling things out. And so I'll be honest, as a trustee, I want to see how the adult vaccine is rolled out, because I just need to see that. The reason why I ran for this office was because I had been in meetings with the superintendent, and I had attended a board meeting, and I had asked about COVID, and the plan didn't exist. And the following Monday, schools were closed. So my thing is let's see the plan, let's see the rollout, and then we can talk about kids, because they are really vulnerable. Now, if their parents want to get them the vaccine, more power to them. But for us to mandate it, I just need to see the adult rollout first.
I don't know what you're talking about, trustees. The Clark County School District never screws up a rollout. Never. That's never happened. Weird. Okay. If I don't get to these next questions, I may be murdered. So I think you know who's coming. Candy Magnus asks, my mother.
The famous Candy Magnus.
Yeah, the famous Candy Magnus. But I also have to get to some of my teacher friends who I tagged in this, who I did this whole show for. So, and some parents. So Candy says, my question is on COVID, that COVID protocol is not in full practice. Cleaning, sanitizing, and mask wearing in the classroom specifically. We have 2 8-hour custodians, one at a night, one in the day, and this is a huge problem. Does anyone have a plan to fix this? Go ahead, trustee.
So this was on my agenda for the superintendent today, because I am so like, this is my bugaboo, is that there is no consistency in the COVID protocol. So I had that conversation with him today, and I am with Candy on this. It's scary because we want to ensure that our kids do not catch COVID. How can we do that if the protocol is not followed by everyone in the district, that it is consistent? And so I'm totally with her. The thing is that we don't have enough custodians. If we had more custodians, we could do a better job. This is what the superintendent tells me, and I believe him, because I know we have 695 positions to fill just in support professionals. In teachers, it's even more. So just looking at that, I wish I could give her a good process that we're trying to follow, but know that we're asking about it all the time because we're with her.
Yeah, and we're getting a couple other comments in the chat from Alexis Salt, which she has a question we'll get to in a second, and Vicki Ann both said, I'm cleaning my own classroom at this point. It takes every second if passing to do it. Alexis says, I clean my own classroom, and it's only possible because my biggest class size is 19. So you can imagine what's happening because she teaches out in Indian Springs. You can imagine what's happening in some of these classrooms, which I was in when I was in the Clark County School District, where there's over 40 kids and you're trying to just get to your next passing period or whatever. You know, the cleaning needs to happen. These kids are sitting on top of each other, breathing on each other. So this is it. If we're going to have these kids and these educators and the support staff and all the people around them be safe, the only way to do that is to clean our classrooms.
That's true. And we just don't have enough custodians to do it. I am upset that the teachers have to do it, but I don't know how else we can mitigate the spread of COVID.
Yeah, it's really unacceptable. So we need to work on more custodians. All right, now I got to move to my other mother, Dolly. She said, this has been the most difficult year of our career. Yet now Clark County School District is not willing or able to pay our contracted, agreed upon pay increase. Federal funds are to be used to help districts keep kids in school. It helps to have staff to keep kids in school. Can the federal funds be used to help pay staff? Trustee Cavazos or Guzman?
Can they be used to pay staff? This is one of those questions that if you were in a courtroom, like I used to be all the time when I worked for a family court, where you say anything's possible, but is it going to be done? Are the dollars going to be sent in that direction? The short answer is, under the parameters of the federal funding, yes, but we have not been given the specifics. I'm going to give you one example from the other night, and that was that I asked a question about the mental health, and I said, programs are wonderful, outsourcing, these different things that we have, they've all been a help, but they're only an adjunct. We need the people, the bodies on campus to talk to kids, to have that one-on-one conversation. If you send out a survey and a kid sends back something that alerts someone, you still need somebody to be able to go out there. So one of my questions was, are we going to be able to put more social workers, counselors, psychologists, student success facilitators? We don't have some positions anymore that existed in the past. We don't have, as Trustee Guzman mentioned, we have, and not just in her district, but all over the district, we had that principal buyout. We lost, I can't use Linda language here, I forgot. We lost a lot of administrators, veteran administrators, veterans that know how many police officers need to be at a football game, that know that if you're going to have this situation and this event, how do you structure it so that you're not going to have a problem with kids interacting with one another? So on this particular thing, yes is the answer, and that's just the generic answer. But I think the more important question, and I think this is what they're getting at, is will the money be used for that reason? And I can't give you the answer to that right now, but we're going to be asking a heck of a lot of questions before November 18th. And Trustee Guzman, I don't know if you mentioned this, but Superintendent Jarrett did mention at last week's meeting that the town halls are not over with. Is that correct? That we're going to be having more town halls with more input, and we will make sure that not just Annette, but Candy also knows about this, and Dolly and Ryan and all of our other amazing educators. We want you to be there.
Needs to be negotiated.
Yes.
We have unions for a reason.
And don't worry, we'll be at those town halls with pleasure. So I do want to get to Alexis's question. A lot of our educators are starting to roll in now because they're just getting home from school after doing 40 people's jobs. Alexis said, I had a coworker break all the way down today. What we are doing is hurting people. Kids are literally cutting themselves over, quote, learning loss, because the people in charge keep telling them and everyone else that they've lost so much to justify all our shitty programs they're forcing down our throats. How are we going to help these kids? They're having full-on panic attacks in class. Nothing matters until we do something, and all the people at the top do is go on about data. I'm emotionally exhausted. What is your plan?
Do you want to start with that, Lisa? I'll chime in since I've been talking a lot.
Sure. So that's actually one of our priorities for the ARP funding is social, is SEL, but also for our educators. So it's really important that our educators get the help that they need, because yeah, she's right. It's not good for any educator right now. And they feel like they're carrying the weight of the world on them, and they normally do, right? That's an everyday occurrence for our educators, but it is even heavier this year. And we know, we hear them. And the fact that an educator broke down, and I think you said they just continue to talk about data, that bothers me, because I feel like an educator needs to have the compassion and to the understanding that, yeah, this is overwhelming. And yes, even though the district needs the data, we need you more. And as a trustee, that is my philosophy. Yes, we do need the data to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, but we need you more. So maybe the total amount of data needs to be looked at, and your self-help needs to be fostered more. But we've asked for art money for that specifically.
Yes, absolutely. And Annette, I'll chime in a little bit on that too, is that I say this to parents all the time, you know, I survived 5 children by hook or crook getting through CCSD, and not all in the same way, they're all different, but I keep saying to them as a former educator, I know that Lisa and I get, should we say, criticized or addressed sometimes as far as being teachers, and that we're only taking that side. Absolutely not. We're parents also. And when you look at who is taking care of your child and supporting your child and teaching your child, if those folks are not in a good place, how can they be in a good place to teach your child, to support your child, and to be there? And our educators, as I think this was Alexis's question, right? She was there for her colleague, okay? And we have to make sure that we're going to have the resources for those educators, because I think Annette said 40 different jobs. I wager to guess that's even more than that. We need to look at this not just as a data point. Behind every single data point is a human being. And if we don't address the human being, all the data points in the world are not going to matter one bit, because we're not going to have the people to keep our schools going, period.
So speaking of that, I want to get to 2 last questions. This next question is from my friend Heather Witt, who is a science teacher at Arborview. And she said, I'd like to know when we are getting our step increases. And she said, I'd also like to know, what about all of the money coming from mining? And we know that's delayed until 2023 based on the way the law was written this year during the legislative session. But how is it going to play out? How are we going to use that money to help our educators get paid what they finally deserve? And what about these step increases? Because we've been hearing a lot about that.
We're getting a lot of questions on that, but as Trustee Guzman has said, that is on the negotiating team. We will be brought, and I wanted to put another word in there, Annette, and I believe Trustee Guzman had said choices of the different plans. I think she said plans. But when they bring this to us, we're not on that negotiating team. We have attorneys on there. We have the deputy superintendent, Brenda Larson-Mitchell, that's on there. We're not on there. So when they bring these plans to us, there are different options. And most of the time, because we have asked, and thank you, Trustee Guzman, I think it was you who asked the other day about our binders, our notebooks, or it might've been Trustee Ford, but we have a lot that is brought to us, and it's usually at 2:30 or 3 o'clock before a board meeting. That doesn't mean it's always going to be on, that's the night we're voting on it, but we don't get to keep most of that. We have to hand that back. So we just get a chance to go over it. So we cannot personally and individually comment on the step increases because we're not on that team. We're not giving input till they bring that to us. And now I will turn that over to the union expert. So if she has anything, I come from a family where my father was an underground copper miner for 37 years, straight ticket union person. So, but this is the expert right here as far as on the actual negotiation process.
So I just want to say that the district has given the go-ahead to negotiate. What that looks like is up to the negotiations team. The district wanted, well, the trustees, I will say the trustees gave guidance that we wanted to have contracts done before we started the school year. If you do not have a contract, you need to talk to your union because we wanted to have it.
Yes, we did.
So And I'm not saying that the union is not doing their absolute best. I'm saying they are, but there's probably something going on, and they can communicate it. We can't. And so that's what I would say, is to talk to your union. They know what's happening better than we do. We only get the end result. We give the okay to start the negotiations, and then we get the end result. And everything that happens in between, we don't know. We don't know. We get your emails. We hear you at board meetings, but we honestly don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and so for the folks who are on watching right now, I know many of you are having a discussion in the chat. Both trustees, I would encourage you to go into the chat, because there's a lot of school district employees commenting in the chat right now. We're not going to get to all of those, but please go into the chat after this, because there's a lot of really good conversation happening in our chat right now, and I want y'all to see that. It's on our Facebook page. You know, I want to watch this, or I want to close this up with just some final thoughts. You know, there's so many issues happening in our school district right now, whether it's, you know, the staff dealing with so many things that they shouldn't be dealing with, not having the support they need, not having the level of pay they need, all of those things. You've got, you know, employees constantly worried about their health insurance, which I know is another huge issue for the staff and employees. And then you've got COVID-19 and all of that. You've got anti-racism policies. You've got you've got transgender policies, all of these important things that the school district has to deal with. But a lot of this is stuff that was still a problem when I went to school, and not much has changed. So what is your hope for the future, and how do we get out of the bottom in our school district and start to rise to the top, and start to use more of these ARP dollars and the state dollars to really maximize things and do better in this school district? Because I think that's what we all want to see. So Trustee Cavazos, I'll start with you, just kind of closing thoughts.
Okay, well, we have a new per pupil funding plan. We are looking at, what I am looking at, and I'll just speak for myself, but I've heard this from many of the board members, is we need these monies to go into the classrooms. I am not a big proponent of always privatizing or putting these out to external groups. I think we have a lot of talent here in the district. Do we need sometimes to get some help? Yes, we do. But when we talk about student achievement, and we get thrown at us all the time, why are you guys not talking about student achievement? Well, you know what? We are. A lot of this has to do with student achievement. If you do not have a child that feels safe in school, how are they going to achieve? If you have a child that's being discriminated against, how are they going to have achieved? If you have a child that is not having their IEP, their 504, if they are not having their needs met, how are they going to achieve? So I think that what we need to look at, one of my biggest things, is the communication in this district needs to get way better. And I feel guilty if I have like 100 emails and I only get to 50 of them. I feel that I'm not a good communicator, and we're trying our best. But we need to be proactive. I've been saying that. This is my 4th year on the board, because I was appointed and then elected. So if we keep doing crisis reactive mode, how are our children going to get ahead? How are our teachers going to be able to take care of the educational needs of our children if they keep having one thing after another put on their plate? And it's a common saying, what are you taking off our plates? And I'm sorry to say there's not a lot being taken off their plates. And I am not talking about just teachers. I'm talking about the support professionals. Support professionals kept our summer programs and kept things going during this past summer. And we had a lot of good things happening. I don't want to always focus on the negative. We had a lot of good things happening, but I think that we need to listen to the most powerful voices, and those are the students that are actually going through this. And we're trying to get more, and I know Trustee Guzman and I have been talking about this, trying to get more student voices involved. There's a lot of other districts in that that in the United States, they actually have a trustee on the negotiating team. That's as far as I'm going to go on that. I've just kind of, when I'm up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, these are the fascinating things that I'm reading about. Washoe County has Carson City has 2 students. They're non-voting, but they give reports and they're actually on the board. So we need to bring a more collaborative, proactive voice, because we don't want to be on the wrong list anymore. We want to be able to take the things that are working in our district, that are doing well. And it's really frustrating to hear people say, we have a pocket of excellence over here. We have a pocket of excellence over here. We have a lot of pockets of excellence, but they're not the ones that are getting the attention. So again, another soapbox here. Annette always opens up these things when I know that we're almost done and we need like 4 hours, Annette, to go over this with an intermission, popcorn, everything.
Well, next time we'll have beer and some popcorn and it'll be great. And we'll just like, after we're done talking about this heavy stuff, we'll just, have like a commiserating session with all the teachers.
Okay, we'll do that
too.
But anyway, proactive and listening to the student, educator, and parent voices, and actually implementing it, not just doing the feel good stuff and the Band-Aid stuff, but actually implementing it.
Absolutely. Trustee Guzman, you want to finish up with your final thoughts and where we go from here?
So as I say all the time, an educator's working conditions is a student's learning conditions. And in order for us to ensure that we're going in the right direction, we have to make sure that our educators are getting what they need. And when I say educators, I mean teachers, administrators, support professionals, the entire umbrella. And in that way, our kids will get what they need. I think that parents are critical to making this happen. And because in our district, we encourage parent involvement to the nth degree, which I think is amazing. Some of the things that happen around our district that I think really needs to be looked at and maybe shine a light on is like in Henderson, we offer grants for specialized different things that people do within their classrooms. Not all kids learn the same. I mean, we talked about that in the beginning with COVID, and educators know how to teach their children in order to make sure that they can be successful. I mean, look at you, Annette, you're successful and you came out of the Clark County School District. So I'm just saying that there are great things happening within our district, and our teachers are really trying to facilitate that. And I think what we need to do as a district is look at where the teachers are looking to get their great ideas, to do those awesome things for their kids, and try to assist and implement that. And that's, it's kind of like I saw that Henderson is working with the Hope Squad, and I want to know more about that. So I've reached out because I don't know what that is. And there are lots of things that that the different cities do for our district that we need to really tap into and see what they're doing and why the teachers are reaching out to them instead of to us. So I feel like that's the direction we need to go. I feel like, truly listening to what people are saying and not just telling them we hear them and then doing our own thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I just want to say, Vicki Ann just commented in the comments, this has been great. We need more like this. Educators are often afraid to speak up, but this feels like a safe space. And it is a safe space, and nobody's going to ever get in trouble for what they write here. And if they do, I will also do accountability on that. But this is a safe space, and we want our educators and our parents and our support staff to come here and feel like they can talk directly to their elected officials and the people who represent them. So I want to thank you both for joining me tonight. Thank you for staying over. I know we had a lot of questions, but I really wanted to get to them and spend some really, quality time on this topic. And I hope you all will both come back with me soon, because this conversation is far from over.
We'd love to, Annette. Here I am speaking for Lisa.
Absolutely. No, I would love to. I would love to.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of you who watched at home. Thank you all for coming and joining us on a Tuesday evening instead of our normal Thursday evening, so we can be respectful to our Jewish friends and so they can observe their holiday this week. And I want to just say thank you to all of our team for getting me all the comments, and the chat was so lively tonight. So please join us again next Thursday. We are going to be having a chat about public lands because next week is Public Lands Week in Nevada. The governor will be signing a proclamation designating Nevada Public Lands Day on Saturday,
awesome.
September 25th. And we will also have National Public Lands Day on September 25th. We have lots of events coming up. We'll put those events in the chat, but we would love for you all to join us. We have a virtual town hall with Treasurer Zach Conine and Senator Chris Brooks on Tuesday, the 21st. We have another Out in Front episode on Thursday, September 22nd, talking about the new executive order that Governor Sisolak just signed on wildlife corridors. We're going to have a digital day of action on Friday where we're promoting everything we're doing for Public Lands Day. And then the big Public Lands Day celebration is going to be COVID safe, masks required outside. We're going to have a donut truck there, so you don't want to miss it. You have to register for this event because we are limiting it to 100 people. And we are going to do a trash pickup at Mountains Edge Regional Park and do that walking trail. And then we're going to have a virtual celebration in the afternoon for those who may not feel safe coming out to an in-person event. That will be at 2 p.m. on the Protect Nevada Facebook page, and we'll stream it to all of our different pages as well. So again, Saturday the 25th is Nevada Public Lands Day. Big event in the morning that you can register for. We'll put the link in the chat. And then our virtual event in the afternoon with all of that. We will be live next week again on Thursday. We'll be back to our regular time slot at 6 p.m. for our chat on the executive order. I want to thank both of these fabulous women for joining us. Please be safe in this conversation, especially you, Trustee Cavazos, because I know you think you're Superwoman and you are, but I want you to be safe. And for all of our viewers at home, thank you, especially our teachers and our support staff.
Yes.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
putting your lives on the line for us and our children. And thank you for just being the most awesome educators possible against incredible odds. I love you all, and I appreciate what you do for our communities all across this state. So thank you. And, just a reminder, make sure you get vaccinated and make sure you continue wearing your mask. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next Thursday Out in Front with Annette. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, Annette. Thank you, Annette.
Bye,
and
Annette.
staff.
Thank
Bye,
you.
staff. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.